Latimer is joining me now. Good to have you here on Picks and Politics.
Dan, nice to be with you.
So let's begin right now, because you represent a good portion of Westchester right now as the county executive, right? And some of the Bronx could be in play for this congressional district, right? A big issue for the area, believe it or not, before we get to the real kitchen table issues, it's what's happening overseas between Israel and Hamas. And your support for Israel has contrasted with Congressman Bowman, but you don't want it to be a central part of the campaign. Talk about your position and why you don't want it to be a central focus.
Well, I think what's important to understand, Dan, is that Westchester County has the second largest concentration of Jewish residents and thereby voters in New York State, after New York City. So it's an important block of individuals in our county. I happen to be Roman Catholic of Irish and Italian background. But any large ethnic group, an African-American group, a Latino group, in this case, the Jewish-American group, have certain needs and certain concerns. And any elected official has to be attentive to it. It doesn't mean you have to agree to the nth degree, but you can't ignore it. Yep. And what's happened overseas, particularly on October 7th with the Hamas vicious attack, I had the chance to be in Israel with other elected officials about a month and a half after that attack, has really moved the Jewish community to expect their representation in Washington to speak up. Now, again, not to give a blank check to Israel, but to work to try to give Israel secure borders and to deal with Hamas for what it is. It's a terrorist organization that's done something very vicious.
Besides your contrast with Mr. Bowman, there seems to be division among Democrats overall on this issue, right? So if you were elected to Congress, how would you bring unity to the Democrats on this very issue where there seems to be some division?
Well, the first thing is that division in and of itself isn't a problem. The problem is how you express that division. Yeah. I've served now in the state government, county government, I've been an executive and a legislator. The division, when it manifests itself by press conferences where you shout out on somebody, you stand in front of the White House and you point at Joe Biden from your own party, that's where the division becomes difficult. The intelligent thing to do for any individual Congress member, Democratic Congress member, is to work through the Democratic delegation and the leadership. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the Democratic leader, would be the next speaker. I served with Mr. Jeffries in the New York State Assembly and other members of the congressional delegation, and you express your support there, and you also express the nuance of public policy that you want to see, so that when the President Joe Biden now, we'll see what happens after November 24, that they get a sense of how the Democratic mainstream of Congress members feel. And that's important because what happens all across the world is being watched by lots of players. Yeah. And the things that we say domestically to try to get votes are not ignored by the players overseas.
Let me talk about your decision to run overall, because Democrats hold a slim majority in the House, as you know, right? Republicans really hoping to win big come this November. Every seat crucial. So why challenge a Democrat?
Well, because the nature of what individuals are doing in Washington right now is corrosive to the values that I have as a Democrat, that I've experienced during my time as county executive, state legislator, and so forth. There's much more performance art in Washington than performance.
So you don't believe that Mr. Bowman was performing well?
Well, no, what I think is that there's too much attempt to try to get attention, to say the bombastic thing, and not work as a legislator needs to work on the substance of what you send somebody to Congress to do. You send somebody to Congress to work on legislation. You send them to work with executive branches to try to bring resources back to the district. You try to work as part of a mainstream party to move public policy. When you step outside that role, when you see yourself as a spokesperson for a movement, you're not showing the proper attention to the district, and you're not working as part of a team toward the goal that the Democrats in general have to do.
You're not saying Mr. Bowman's name, but you don't believe that was happening for your district?
I think there's a better way to do it, and I think I've proven that over my career. I understand as a local person, most people don't know what I did in the state Senate, but that to me is the model, and it's responding to the way people feel in the district.
So let's talk about some of the big issues for the district, right? Of course, a big issue, not only among those in your district, but overall in the country, is the migrant crisis. Who do you believe, when you look at it, should be paying for migrants who are bused to other cities?
It's a national problem, and it needs a national solution. The fact that it's come to the doorstep of the city of New York, and then by extension to the doorstep of Westchester County and other suburban counties, this is a national issue. It has to be governed. You need an overall overhaul of our immigration laws, and you do need border security in that, but you also need a different structure for how people deal with true asylum seekers, and also how you deal with people who really want to come to work in the country, not necessarily live in the country for the long haul. All of those things, I think, require a bipartisan approach in Washington. You don't have that now because there's too much, as I said before, the performance politics where you're on the extreme and you're appealing only to bases. You have to come to the middle. I've done that in county government, and I've done that during my tenure in state government. That's the mindset you need in the House of Representatives in the future.
On this issue, has President Biden's strategy for the border, when you look at it right now, has it been the right one?
No, I don't think so. I think what you have to do is step in and take a stronger federal role. And I think that federal role deals with the fact there is a crisis at the border. Texas is being swamped with people coming over the border seeking asylum. Our laws for asylum allow them to do that. But then you're allowing the Texas governor to determine that he'll send an unlimited number of migrants to New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago and do nothing about Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Joplin, Missouri. So you're taking the crisis and you're dropping it on the doorstep of certain areas. Keep in mind, New York was the portal for all the immigrants back in the day. My Italian and Irish ancestors came through the New York portal. So we've been through this before, but what's happening to New York City and to this area is unfair, and it needs to be balanced out nationwide.
So if the president didn't take the right approach in the border crisis, should he be, in your view, the nominee moving forward?
Absolutely, he should be the nominee. This is where you work on a problem that you have together. The president has not had a cooperative House of Representatives on these issues because the Republican majority insists on a border wall as the answer to this, and it's not the answer to this. But it requires negotiation. I think there are reasonable people on both sides, and I would hope that President Biden will show that leadership when he knows that he's got a Congress that can respond to a nuanced way to handle this problem.
So the migrant crisis, of course, is what all are talking about, but you're on the ground each and every day in Westchester County. What are you hearing, and what would you bring to Congress to fight for what you would say is the #1 issue for this district?
Well, it's not easy to say #1, Dan, because the district, as you saw the map, has both suburban and urban elements.
Right, and you're featuring those in poverty and those very wealthy.
Right, and part of Westchester, where I grew up in the city of Mount Vernon, right on the border of the Bronx, looks a lot more like the Bronx than it does like the classic Pocantico Hills estate that people think of as Westchester. In the urban centers of our county, and even in the middle-class areas of our county, we have an affordable housing problem.
Yep.
We have a problem with making sure that people have job opportunities that can grow, that they can transport themselves to, commute to. And then also there's a great concern in both suburban and urban parts of the district about climate change. And are we doing the things we need to do to be climate resilient, water quality, land usage, and things of that nature? The federal government has done almost nothing this year because the House of Representatives has been stalemated in this kind of performance politics. And you've got to be able to get off dead center and start to do the kind of legislation and budgeting that projects results and sponsorship of the right directions in these things.
Yeah, just tip of the iceberg here. Last question here. Did you receive calls from any current members of Congress that said, hey, Mr. Latimer, we want you to run?
You know, truthfully, no. But I served with 5 current members of Congress and members of the State Assembly. I reached out to some of them just to get their sense of what it's like to be in Congress vis-a-vis our past experience in the state legislature. So it wasn't them calling on me to do it. It was me calling on them to tap their expertise. Yeah. I think if I go to Washington, I'll walk in the door with some credibility with some of the colleagues, and we'll be able to work together well.
All right, this is just the beginning of the conversation for what will be a long year. We'll see what plays out, too, with the redistricting, but you're welcome back anytime, okay?
Dan, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Good to see you, Mr. Latimer. A reminder to voters, the Democratic primary for congressional candidates coming up, okay? So June 25th. I know it's some time away, but it'll be around here as soon as you know it. We also are inviting Congressman Jamal Bowman to come on this very show in the hopes of presenting both sides of the race, so we hope to get him on soon as we wait his response.